We wanted to know what skills do people needed to develop to be able to work in these enterprises or in these workplaces. And when we asked the questions to employers, these are the answers. It's more than 100% because they answered sometimes more than one skills, but they said, well, most of the stuff that people need to develop is the blue is the soft skills, or the generic skills, and the red, the technical skills. Actually, did not mention it with these words, but we interviewed them for a couple hours, and then we took up the stuff, and then we tried to put that in terms of skills language. That's our language, it's not theirs. So that's our language. So you see, we were surprised because, but I was not, but some people were. They put a lot of importance on the technical skills and the soft skills. It has nothing to do with the GED or the grade 12, because this is mostly vocational training, and this is learning all your life. So, and a few, not much were, I mean, essential skills were only 30%, and actually in New Brunswick, the only program that was subsidized to do training in the workplace were the essential skills. But still, they only identified 30% of these skills. So, for the employers, when you ask them what a learner needs to do to be competent, they can talk to you about tasks and skills. It's their reality, it's their language. But they get contaminated by educators. And then they start to talk about GED and grade 12. We asked the same question, actually, to educators and job counselors, people like us. It's in French, but I'll translate it. You see, when I asked them the same question, what type of skills do people need to work in this area? They did not answer by skills and by task. They all answered by program. They said they need a high school diploma, 22%, 47%. GED, 15%. Post-secondary education, 16%, and other types of training. So it's not in their DNA. They can't talk about skills and competencies and tasks. They were talking about programs. So that's why when you talk to employers, we need a grade 12 or we need a GED, because they've been contaminated by the ecosystem of adult education. And if we're not reframing ourselves, actually it's easy to blame employers to asking for a grade 12, but actually they are a victim also. They are a victim of a paradigm that we can't get out of, and not always helping learners, employees, employers. Of course I do that, I would do that. I'm talking now to practitioners. You're easy to convince. There's some people more not as easy to convince, but I mean that type of discussion needs to occur between funders and bureaucrats and trainers and program designers, because it has a lot of implication. But this idea, you see, if you reframe it differently with these employers, and you start talking to employers about tasks and skills to be developed, be task ready and stuff like that. When I talk to this approach with employers, most of them agree. They say, well, I'd rather, yeah, that's my approach, because I want them to be job ready and I'd rather have that. And then you can always look about, is there a way to get that recognized, get certification, and get away from credentials that are not accessible. Here, it's an end result. You use the content to develop the skills, and you don't start from the content to determine if a person would be competent. Anyway, here you're not interested in see if they're competent. You're actually interested in they're knowledgeable enough to go to the next level. A skill is a person's ability to mobilize its own resources, internal and external, to perform a task. What are internal resources? It's the knowledge, the know-how, I invented that word, I'm good at that, and the attitudes that helps person complete appropriate a task or a group of tasks. So you can't separate these. They are actually part of the skills. If you look at the one of Henri Boudreau's schema, is quite interesting. He says, to be competent, to have the right competence to do a task, you need to put together the three savoirs. The savoir, which are the knowledge, the savoir-faire, which is the know-how or the ability, and the savoir-être, which are, some people would say attitudes, but I like put yourself in a disposition, the right disposition to perform a task, the right confidence level, the right opening mind level. So if you don't have these three, you're actually not going to be able to perform the task. So they are, but it's not your starting point. It's after you decide what are the tasks and what are the skills you need to, and then you start to say, okay, to develop that skill, What does he need to know? What does he need to do? And how does he need to behave to perform the task? For me, when we worked with job seekers in Hawkesbury, and we met 600 of them in a year, all of them would tell me, if I go back to training, is to get a job because I need to get a job. It was not an ideology. He wanted a job. It was his needs. So in that context, we went in that direction to meet some needs that we felt. But after we realized that this approach was kind of interesting to meet all kinds of needs, not only for employability purposes. So I think in andragogy, my only ideology is to meet the needs of the people and using the system to do it in a clean way, in a transparent way. That's my only ideology. Funders might have different ideology, employers also. And even educators have their own ideology sometimes. Sometimes, when I was a young educator, long time ago, I was thinking that no, people need to learn to become good citizens. They need to be able to make their decisions, stuff like that. And over the years, I realized it's my needs, it's not always theirs. I'm imposing my vision on them. And they don't have the time. And I was able to scholarize myself. I was able to get to scholarize. Can we say that? Scholarize? Where are the francophone here? I need some help. I was able to educate myself to get high literacy skills. But some people did not. And at 45, 50 years old, it might not be their needs and they might not have the time. So it's difficult for us. Sometimes we can do like governments do and we impose our ideology on them. So I'd say one of the challenges as an educator, as an andragogue, is always to be not impose our ideology on the people and try to see what are the needs and can we focus on that. And even though I don't agree with what he's saying, that's what he wants, that's what he needs. And it's difficult for us sometimes to judge people who don't have jobs, have families, and need to work. But it's the reality. In Canada, there's a lot of consultants like me and a lot of firms that made a lot of money developing these type of approach for workplace purposes and employability purposes, knowing very well that there was a lot of money coming in from the Fed and from the provincial. I never went into that because it would betray my ideology, because I don't want all the people to go into employment bond program. Not everybody wants that. So that's why in Nova Scotia it's interesting. You have to. And this one, like I said, you can teach a grandmother to Skype with their grandkids in a few hours with this approach. They don't need a GED for that. You see, it's meeting a needs with an approach that makes much more sense for the learners, for yourself as a trainer, and for the learning system. What I'm trying to say here, we started from the skill level, and then we go from program design and then funders. It's not something that is easy to do, but I think we have to rethink the whole ecosystem of adult learning to do that. Mm-hmm. We actually did it in Hawkesbury, in a sense. We actually developed vocational training program for people with no literacy skills. Never happened before. But still, it was employment specific, and we had to tweak some funders and some organization. But we were never able to make it a permanent thing, because we never work at the macro level. We only work at the micro level. In New Brunswick, what we're actually trying to do is we're trying to work at the macro level, to have ministries. If you really want to go there, this is what it means you could actually do that make it efficient on the field and let people with much more resources and possibilities develop all kinds of skills for all kinds of contexts and all kinds of needs. And probably with less money. And I think it's important to get back to this, to understand what we've been talking about. You remember I talked at the beginning about these international surveys on skills, competencies. There's been one in 94, 2003, 2012. And these are the surveys that told us that 60% of Nova Scotians were beyond level 3, they were about level 1 and 2, and they all had issues about facing common tasks that you would find in Nova Scotia society. But actually, what's interesting about these surveys is not itself the levels of where people were, because then you can always argue about the history, the economics, and stuff like that. What was interesting is that in 1994, the first time I read this research report, is that the most important influential factor, can I say that? I'm not sometimes I put too much words. The most important influential factor on skills maintenance and development was application of skills. It was not necessarily education level and training time. It was the possibility to apply your skills. For examples, you would have people who've worked all their lives and their skills would have increased constantly like that because they were able to apply different set of skills in different settings at work. And some people with high scholarity who were not working or were not really active and not had a chance to apply their skills went like that. So it told us that skills is like a muscle. You need to apply it to develop it and to maintain it. So this idea of training, and adult educators, we tend to think that we can do it all. We tend to think that we're going to train people and they're going to be ready and they're going to have all the skills at the right levels to get a job. That is telling us it's a wrong way to look at it. The idea is to get the right skills to be job ready at the right level, even though they don't have all the skills and all the skills developed and the critical thinking and stuff like that. But what is Ratio is telling us, if you put them in a context where they will be able to apply these skills, skills will continue to develop. And actually, it will develop much more in application context than learning, formal learning. Apprenticeship is based on that. It's all about applying skills. They come back to class, but just to learn some new stuff, and then they go apply. And apprenticeship people are quite competent. I mean, when you get their card. So I think we have to see program building inspired by that. So we need to develop the right strategic skills so people can be ready for something and hoping that when they get in, it could be job or something else, the skills will continue to develop. But for that, we need to be humble. We need to say that it's not only the educator that will do the work, it's the rest of the society. So skills is a continuum and it develops itself. So the question of recognition becomes important because if you can get somebody in a job because he's been recognized, but he doesn't have all the complete skills, the job will do the rest. And we have to understand that.